Disclaimer.
History loves a simple story. We are told that Reed Hastings, a brilliant software engineer, was charged a $40 late fee for a VHS copy of Apollo 13, and in a fit of righteous anger, decided to burn the movie rental industry to the ground. It's a clean narrative. It's also largely a marketing fabrication. The real story of Netflix begins in the passenger seat of a car. Mark Randolph, a veteran direct response marketer, and Reed Hastings, who had just sold his company, Pure Atria, for $700 million, were commuting together. They weren't looking for a blockbuster killer. They were looking for an e-commerce play. In 1997, Amazon was already proving that books were the perfect e-commerce vehicle. Why? Because books are durable, standardized, and easy to ship. Randolph and Hastings spent months brainstorming the Amazon of X. They looked at customized sporting goods. They looked at dog food. They even considered personalized shampoo. But for every idea, the technical friction was too high. Shampoos leak, surfboards break, dog food is heavy, making the shipping to margin ratio impossible for a startup. Then they looked at movies. At the time, the world was enslaved to the VHS. From a technical standpoint, the VHS was an e-commerce nightmare. It weighed half a pound. It was fragile. If you dropped it, the housing cracked. If you put it near a magnet, the data was corrupted. Worst of all, it was thick. Mailing a VHS required a padded box and cost nearly $5 in postage. The math didn't work. But then, Reed Hastings heard about a new technology emerging from Japan, the digital versatile disc, the DVD. To the average consumer in 1997, a DVD was just a shiny circle. To Hastings and Randolph, it was a data-dense, lightweight, mailable commodity. It was a flat technology. They didn't write a business plan first. They ran a proof of concept. They went to a local shop in Santa Cruz, bought a used music CD, since DVDs weren't even available for sale yet, and mailed it to Reed's house in a standard white envelope. The cost, 32 cents. The result, the disc arrived the next morning, unscratched. That 32-cent stamp was the hello world of Netflix. It proved that the infrastructure of the United States Postal Service could be used as a high-speed, decentralized distribution network for digital data. Netflix launched with 30 employees and 925 titles. That was literally every DVD that had been manufactured at that point in history. But building the website was a monumental technical challenge. In 1998, web development was the Wild West. There were no cloud services, there was no Shopify, there was no AWS. The original Netflix tech stack was a monolith. It was built on high-end Sun Microsystems servers running a massive Oracle database. They used a transactional logic model. Every time a customer rented a movie, the database had to lock that row, update the inventory count, process a credit card via slow dial-up gateway, and trigger a print command for the warehouse. On launch day, they expected a few hundred hits. Instead, they were featured on several tech blogs. The servers melted. Within hours, the site was crawling. Reed Hastings had to go to a local electronics store to buy more memory sticks just to keep the Oracle database from seizing up. This was the first lesson of Netflix engineering. Scalability is a matter of survival. But even with the site running, they had a business logic problem. At first, Netflix was just a rental store on the web. You paid $4 per movie plus $2 shipping. It was a one-to-one clone of the Blockbuster model. And it was failing. Because they were a startup, their customer acquisition cost, or SAC, was astronomical. They were spending $15 in advertising to get one person to rent one $4 movie. They were hemorrhaging cash. They realized that to win, they couldn't just change the medium of the movie. They had to change the math of the movie. In 1999, Mark Randolph and the team made a radical pivot. They moved to a subscription model. For a flat monthly fee, you could have 3 movies out at a time. No late fees. No due dates. This sounds like a marketing win, but it was actually a data engineering breakthrough. With the subscription model came the queue. This was a simple list where users could rank the movies they wanted to see next. From a technical perspective, the queue was a predictive analytics engine. Before the queue, Netflix was reactive. They had to wait for you to order. With the queue, Netflix became proactive. They knew exactly what their customers wanted weeks in advance. This allowed for inventory balancing. If 1,000 people had The Matrix at the top of their queue, but Netflix only had 500 copies, the algorithm could look at the second movie in those people's queues. If those people liked Speed or John Wick, the system could intelligently route those discs to satisfy the customer while waiting for The Matrix to return. They were using data to smooth out the supply chain. This was the birth of Cinematch. Cinematch was their first proprietary recommendation algorithm. It used collaborative filtering. Think of it this way. The algorithm looks for taste neighbors. If user A likes Star Wars and Star Trek and user B likes Star Wars, the algorithm calculates a high probability that user B will also like Star Trek. By 2000, 80% of Netflix rentals were driven by these recommendations. They weren't just a shipping company anymore. They were an information filtering company. By the year 2000, the dot-com bubble was losing air. Netflix was on track to lose $50 million that year. They were desperate. Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph flew to Dallas to meet with John Antioco, the CEO of Blockbuster. Blockbuster was then a $6 billion empire with 9,000 storefronts. Hastings made a pitch. Blockbuster would buy Netflix for $50 million. Netflix would become Blockbuster.com. Randolph and Hastings would handle the online logistics, and Blockbuster would use their stores for easy returns. According to Randolph, the room went silent. Antioco and his team essentially laughed them out of the room. To the titans of 20th century retail, Netflix was small potatoes. They viewed the internet as a niche hobby for nerds who didn't want to leave their houses. This was a catastrophic failure of technical foresight. Blockbuster saw their business as real estate. Netflix saw their business as bandwidth and data. Hastings and Randolph flew back to California with a new singular mission. They were going to kill the giant. But first, they had to survive the crash. In 2001, the funding dried up. Netflix had to lay off 40% of its staff, one of the most painful days in the company's history. But this forced a technical evolution. With fewer people, they had to automate everything. They couldn't afford a massive customer service team, so they built a self-service UI. They couldn't afford manual warehouse sorting, so they began engineering the Red Envelope logistics system. The Red Envelope is a marvel of industrial engineering. It had to be light enough to ship for one stamp, but strong enough to protect a brittle disk. It had to be machine-readable. Netflix worked with the USPS to ensure their envelopes could bypass manual sorting and go straight into the high-speed flat sorting machines. They essentially hacked the post office's hardware to create a high-speed loop. The technical goal was the overnight promise. If you mailed a disc on Monday, it had to hit a Netflix hub on Tuesday, and your next disc had to arrive on Wednesday. To do this, they built a decentralized network. Instead of one giant warehouse, they built dozens of small ones near USPS sorting hubs. Their software would automatically route your next disc from the warehouse closest to your zip code. They were solving the latency of the physical world. On May 22, 2002, Netflix went public at $15 a share. They were now a real company. But Blockbuster finally woke up. They launched Blockbuster Online and started a price war. They were willing to lose money on every rental just to bleed Netflix dry. Walmart also entered the fray, launching their own DVD by mail service. How did Netflix survive a price war against two of the biggest retailers in the world? With technical efficiency. Because Netflix was software first, their overhead was significantly lower. Every time Walmart or Blockbuster made a mistake, it was a human mistake. When Netflix made a mistake, they fixed the code. They also had a secret weapon, the long tail. Blockbuster stores only carried 2,000 to 3,000 of the newest hits. Netflix carried 50,000 plus titles. Their recommendation engine, Cinematch, was designed to push people into the long tail. It was a brilliant economic hack. New releases like Titanic were expensive because Netflix had to buy thousands of copies. But a niche indie film or an old documentary was sunk cost. If the algorithm could convince you to rent the old documentary instead of the new blockbuster, Netflix's profit margins skyrocketed. By 2005, Walmart surrendered. They handed their customers over to Netflix. The first war was over. Reed Hastings always knew the DVD was a transition technology. The company wasn't called DVDbymail.com. It was called Netflix. In 2007, they launched Watch Instantly. Streaming video in 2007 was a technical nightmare. YouTube existed, but it was for short, low-quality clips. Streaming a 90-minute movie in standard definition required a massive amount of throughput. Netflix's engineers had to solve for buffering. If the internet speed dropped for even a second, the movie would stop. To solve this, they implemented adaptive bitrate streaming. This technology allows the player to look ahead at the internet connection. If your speed drops, the software instantly switches to a lower resolution version of the movie without stopping the playback. It's an invisible hand that prioritizes the experience over resolution. Initially, they relied on Microsoft's Silverlight, but they knew they needed to be everywhere, on TVs, on Xboxes, on Roku boxes. This led to the device explosion. Netflix engineers had to write thousands of different versions of their app to run on everything from a high-powered PC to a low-powered smart toaster. They didn't just build a streaming service, they built a universal media layer. In August 2008, disaster struck. A major hardware failure in a Netflix data center shut down DVD shipping for 3 days. This was a come-to-Jesus moment for the engineering team. They realized that their monolithic architecture, where one big server runs everything, was a single point of failure. If the database died, the company died. Reed Hastings made a decision that shocked the tech world. Netflix would move 100% of its infrastructure to the cloud, specifically to Amazon Web Services. It was a massive risk. Amazon was a competitor. But Hastings knew that Netflix shouldn't be in the business of managing data centers. They should be in the business of delivering joy. This required a total rewrite of their code. They moved from a monolith to microservices. Instead of one giant program, Netflix became a collection of 700+ tiny programs. One microservice handles your login, one handles the queue, one handles the search bar, one handles the billing. Because they are separate, if the search bar crashes, you can still watch your movie. The system became fault-tolerant. To ensure this new cloud system was truly invincible, Netflix invented a new field of engineering, chaos engineering. They built a tool called Chaos Monkey. Chaos Monkey's job is to randomly go into the production environment and kill servers. It literally breaks the system on purpose during business hours. Why? Because it forces engineers to build resilient code. If you know a monkey is going to come in and pull the plug on your server at any moment, you write code that can automatically fail over to another server. They eventually built the Simian Army. Chaos Gorilla could simulate the failure of an entire Amazon availability zone, a whole city's worth of servers. By 2011, Netflix was the most resilient platform on the internet. While other sites went down for hours during AWS outages, Netflix stayed up. They had turned chaos into a competitive advantage. But technical brilliance can't always save you from bad PR. In 2011, Reed Hastings made the biggest mistake of his career. He decided to split Netflix into two companies, Netflix for streaming and Quickster for DVDs. It was a branding disaster. Customers hated the name, and they hated having two separate bills. The stock crashed. People thought Netflix was over. But internally, the data engine was just getting started. Netflix realized that if they wanted to control their destiny, they couldn't just rent content from Hollywood. They had to own it. But they weren't going to make movies like Hollywood did. They were going to make movies like a software company. Netflix tracks everything. They know exactly when you pause a movie. They know if you watch the credits or skip them. They know if you rewatch a specific scene. In 2012, they looked at their data and saw 3 distinct patterns. Millions of users were binge-watching the original British House of Cards. Those same users loved movies directed by David Fincher. Those same users always watched movies starring Kevin Spacey. In the old Hollywood model, you'd film a pilot and test it with a focus group. Netflix skipped the pilot. They used their data to mathematically guarantee success. They outbid HBO for House of Cards with a $100 million commitment for 2 full seasons. It was the first algorithmic original series, and it changed television forever. By 2016, Netflix went global, launching in 130 countries at once. This created a physics problem. The speed of light is a constant. If a user in Sydney, Australia clicks play and the data has to travel from a server in Virginia, there will be a massive delay. To solve this, Netflix built its own global content delivery network called Open Connect. Instead of using the public internet, Netflix built its own hardware, bright red server boxes, and gave them away for free to internet service providers, ISPs like Comcast and Verizon. These boxes are essentially hard drives in the neighborhood. During the middle of the night, when internet traffic is low, Netflix pre-positions its most popular movies onto these local boxes. When you hit play on Stranger Things, the data doesn't travel across the ocean. It travels 10 miles from a local ISP hub to your house. This infrastructure is so efficient that Netflix accounts for up to 15% of all downstream internet traffic worldwide, yet most people never experience a lag. Today, Netflix is no longer just a streaming service. It is a massive, AI-driven experimentation platform. Every single thing you see on your screen is an A/B test. If you watch a lot of horror, the thumbnail for Stranger Things might show a monster. If you watch comedies, it might show the kids laughing. This is dynamic asset generation. Their AI creates thousands of versions of artwork in real time to find the one that makes you click. They have even applied AI to the very pixels you watch. They use per-shot encoding. Instead of encoding an entire movie at one quality level, their AI analyzes every single frame. An action scene with lots of movement gets more bitrate, while a static scene of a person talking gets less. This allows them to deliver 4K video while using 50% less data. From a 32-cent stamp to a global AI infrastructure, Netflix didn't survive because they were lucky. They survived because they were willing to cannibalize their own business. They killed their DVD business to build streaming. They killed their licensing business to build studios. They killed their monolith to build the cloud. In the world of technology, the only way to stay alive is to never stop evolving. Blockbuster is a memory. Netflix is the machine.